Ya boys ready to go west? I'm down, as long as it's not that god-awful event. Xuanzang is a 5-star caster in the permanent summoning pool, so hypothetically she can pay you a visit at any time, something I'm sure you'll come to understand when Scotty's next banner comes around. But how is Xuanzang? Is she an antiquated beatstick, or is she due to get her second wind? Let's find out. Xuanzang's Noble Phantasm is 5 elements Mountain Buddha Palm. It's a single target buster attack that reduces crit chance by a huge amount for 1 turn. With its buff, which is currently out, it ignores defense too. Now assassins aren't exactly known for spamming defense buffs, but there are a few. You have your Cleopatras, First Assans, Nidacry, and Stinky Neats. Not to mention that kind of mechanic can come up in a high difficulty quest, so it's a handy trick to have. As for the crit debuff, it's generally useful. For my part, I tend to find multi-turn crit chance reduction more useful, but in fast, decisive fights, stopping a boss from critting at all has its perks. A large part of what makes Xuanzang's NP abusable is Rapid Sutra casting. It's a battery capping at 80%, and it increases your NP damage for 1 turn. This skill is your top priority to level up, and for a while, it's gonna be your only built-in damage steroid. With support, this lets you run extremely aggressive craft essences like Black Grail or various event damage CEs. You can also opt to run options with low starting charge. Those occasionally pop up during events. Rapid Sutra casting gets a bunch of indirect buffs down the road, but hold that thought. Let's deal with the rest of her current kit first. Xuanzang's teaching gives party NP gain and star generation, both for 3 turns. It also comes with a single turn of party debuff immunity. That last one's the real selling point. Because break bars are a thing, boss enemies tend to have built-in retaliatory mechanics. Some of these are just gain a full NP bar, or, God forbid, remove all your buffs. Motherfucking Demeter. Others, though, dump a shitload of debilitating debuffs, or just spam them in the course of battle, something you're probably familiar with if you did the Las Vegas challenge quest. When debuffs are tied to break bars, you can just pop Xuanzang's teaching right before you do it. The debuffs whiff, and you're good to go. Otherwise, you could pop it preemptively to screen for your main attacker, though if you're running Xuanzang in the first place, it's probably her. While you can just cast it blindly, one way to increase your odds is the card count. The TLDR is that unless a frontliner dies, or you use a hand-modifying skill, this is how it goes. Your frontliners each have 5 cards in their deck, they get combined and shuffled. You draw 5 new cards every turn, but they come from that combined pool until you draw them all. Then they get shuffled and the cycle starts again. What this means is that on turn 2 of a cycle, you know exactly which cards you're going to draw on turn 3. By process of elimination, if you know they're all going to be Xuanzang cards, you can use Xuanzang's teaching to make sure she can't be disrupted by, say, Kotaro spamming his challenge quest stun. The little bastard. As for the NP gain and star generation effects, their effectiveness is more muted. Unless you're running a new account, they don't justify running her in a 2-attacker frontline. Not on their own merits anyway. The NP gain is the better of the two, and Xuanzang is both a triple arts deck and territory creation A+. If you're in the position of using face cards, you can get some mileage there. However, it doesn't play nice with her Buster Noble Phantasm. Real shame too, the thing's got a crazy hit count of 12. This deck NP mismatch is really what makes Xuanzang show her age. Currently, it puts her in a somewhat awkward spot when it comes to picking supports. While there are reasons to pair her with Merlin, which I'll get to in a minute, she doesn't really crit and she relies on Art's face cards. Janky as hell. Waver at least plays nicely, but his buff suite is universal. Also Helena, who can enable a turn 1 NP and give rainbow buffs, but those two don't really generate broken synergies. Back in their day, not needing a super scope to NP on the first turn was the broken synergy. Rounding out Xuanzang's kit is Captivating Rosy Cheeks. Currently it's a taunt skill with damage reduction. Later on though, it gets an upgrade in the form of a standard party-wide attack buff and shortened cooldown. The upgrade is nice. A multi-turn damage buff is something she desperately needed and makes her less of a potato between NP turns. As for the taunt, it's weird. You normally wouldn't run her as a sacrificial servant. Maybe there's an edge case where you just need her debuff immunity for that one turn, but that aside, she's an attacker. You don't necessarily want enemies focusing her down, class advantage or not. But there are ways of exploiting this property. The first case is that you start a fight with Xuanzang, but need a heavy-hitting berserker to finish it. Xuanzang can screen for them, and, if necessary, leave them alone on the field to brave chain the rest of the fight. This is especially important if you're running Bond Heracles as your finisher. The last thing you want to see is an enemy ping-pong between your final 2 servants to pop multiple gut stacks. The second case is that you're running a defensive team, the kind where MASH plays a role. Her defense buffs can give Xuanzang a lot of longevity, and against single-target attackers, she can give her invulnerability so Xuanzang can safely redirect NPs onto herself. A trick you can also do with various mystic codes too. You can round out this style of team with Merlin, Jean, or Nightingale, depending on your friend list, roster, or the needs of a specific fight. Healing, NP mitigation, or a bit of damage. Some things you need to know about Xuanzang as she currently is on NA. Having only a single, one-turn damage steroid is a rough spot to be in. She has an offensive stat line, including the highest attack of any caster, but casters have a nasty built-in penalty. Their class damage modifier is 0.9, meaning you lose 10% for pretty much no good reason. On top of this, Xuanzang has a hard time getting all the card type effectiveness buffs she wants because of her deck NP mismatch. Put together, these factors mean you often feel a hard damage falloff when Rapid Sutra casting is on cooldown. This paints the picture of a servant with legitimate niches, but also serious drawbacks. The addition of a multi-turn attack buff is going to help down the road, but there has to be more, right? There is. Recently in JP, or 2 years from now for Global, we got something called Append Skills. They're unlockable passives, and while they're generally underwhelming, Xuanzang has 2 decent ones. The first of these gives her extra damage against berserkers, which depending on boss mechanics, is actually a situation you could find yourself in. The second and more impactful is mana loading, which lets her start the battle with up to 20% charge. With this and Rapid Sutra casting, she can NP immediately with no external input, regardless of which CE she's using. That's great, and as you're about to find out, it gets even greater. Around the same time that Append Skills come out, we'll get an extremely powerful Buster support in the form of Koyanskaya. In addition to our Buster Crit Suite, she has a 50% targetable battery that reduces her target's cooldowns by 2 turns. Rapid Sutra casting has a 7-turn cooldown, 2 Koyanskayas, and you shave 4 turns off. The Atlas Academy Mystic Code has cooldown reduction as well, removing yet another 2 turns. The final turn will pass by itself as you use your previous NPs, so try this on for size. Let's say you have Xuanzang's mana loading Append skill maxed out. You equip her with Black Grail or an event damage CE, use Rapid Sutra casting, and NP immediately. On turn 2, you use both Koyanskaya's cooldown reduction skills and the Atlas uniform. Because each Tamagun gives 50% charge, Xuanzang can just NP again. And by turn 3, Rapid Sutra casting is off cooldown. Now the problem is that it's an 80% battery and there's no guarantee you'll get the remaining 20% through other means. However, you can cheese this gap in boss fights by popping Xuanzang's other 2 skills on turn 2. With Taunt and NP gain, she can bait the boss into giving her free charge for a 3rd consecutive NP. I don't think Xuanzang will suddenly become a meta-defining servant because of this tech, but having access to it makes her a much more effective beatstick within her niche and extends her usefulness into FGO's future. Before I wrap things up, let's accessorize. We already talked about the Atlas uniform, but other strong Mystic codes include Anniversary Blonde for its guts and buster buffs, and the Mage's Association outfit for its 20% charge. For craft essences, you can technically use a lot of them, especially event ones, but on the other hand, relatively few options really enhance her strengths cleanly. Black Rail overlaps with Rapid Sutra casting, but you want a lot of extra damage on Xuanzang to compensate for a lack of natural steroids, especially before she gets her attack buff. Speaking of which, Golden Sumo is currently a strong option, although over time, you'll likely phase it out in favor of Aerial Drive, which has a combo of Buster and NP damage. Last up is Welcome to Oniland, which is a Buster Arts hybrid CE with starting charge. As for command codes, I'd avoid putting any power picks on Xuanzang. The NP damage ones are okay, but you're better off saving those for heavier hitters. However, you can potentially use some of the niche anti-crit codes. Dove Report removes a crit damage buff and applies crit chance down if you successfully do this. Angel's Bed removes a crit chance buff and provides a paltry heal if that works. Neither of these are particularly great in their own right, but if you're using Xuanzang in a crit suppression role anyway, Dove Report in particular can extend her coverage over multiple turns. On the global server, Xuanzang is at a low ebb. She has niche applications, and players with small rosters will find her a safe option to fight soul eaters, large ghosts, and assassin servants. However, she suffers from a number of flaws that undercut the whole aggressive caster concept and make her sustained damage very questionable. However, the future will bring a number of potent upgrades both to her kit and in the form of compatible supports. So if you're a big Xuanzang fan, you're in luck. All you gotta do is hold out. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come watch me on Twitch where I stream every weekend, 3 PM Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. I posted the stream schedule to YouTube this week, so take a look at the community tab, and you might see something enticing. Till next time.